Hey everyone, welcome to a video on the idea of Sabbath. First off, my name is Brandon, and I get the privilege of sitting here with Pastor Ryan and Pastor Mike. And to be honest with you, as the newest friend of the staff, it really is a incredible opportunity to be able to come alongside this team in this season and create some conversation around what it looks like to Sabbath, to rest, right? Which, if you've grown up in church, you're like, okay, Sabbath, got it. If you haven't grown up in church, you're like, have no idea Sabbath, and in some ways, it can almost be communicated as something that is frowned upon, if you will. So the heart behind this conversation, and that's what it is. We want to invite you into a conversation, and over the next couple weeks, it might get some more content, some material for you to even figure out for you personally what Sabbath and rest looks like in your personal life. But we want to invite you in. We're in a real familiar, comfortable setting. We got our coffee. Grab your coffee, get your drink of choice, and let's talk about Sabbath. Let's talk about rest. So I'll propose a question, because that's what any good conversation does, right? When I say Sabbath, right? Either one of you, what is the first few things that comes to your mind when we talk about Sabbath?
I'm assuming he's not talking about Black Sabbath.
No.
Which would be the hardcore band back in the day. Might have listened to a little bit of that. But yeah, and for me, Sabbath-wise, just being in the church world for a while, it was all about rest. But I think the kind of thing that to me is the area that I struggle with the most is there's an idea of kind of rest as it means like you're tired, you're exhausted, so you're going to kind of take a day off, you're going to rest a little bit. But that's not quite biblically what God meant when he talked about Sabbath. Sabbath being more of a rest that kind of gets to the soul, like almost a reset. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm a driver, and that is probably, out of all the things that I've dealt with in life, after giving my heart to the Lord, I would say that's probably one of the hardest things that I don't think I've done that very well, to be honest with you. I've taken some days off, but to rest,
right,
like the way that God would say rest, that's kind of challenging.
Yeah.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I think it's there's a fine line between resting passively and resting actively. So resting, like you said, out of exhaustion or being tired, or like being overworked, or there's seasons, right? The seasons of the year, you have holidays and things that are just like, gangbusters. Everybody's level 10, emotions are high, and resting to like recover passively versus resting to rejuvenate actively. In my mind, Sabbath requires intentionality.
Sure.
It requires saying, hey, I'm going to take full inventory of where I am and how, after this period of time, can I be a better version and the more healthy version of me after this season of active rest.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we look at rest as days off. And just getting into almost like this sedative state where we veg out and watch football on TV.
Eat a bag of chips.
Which, depending on how much of a sports fan you are, watching football may not be restful.
Yeah, right.
You may be screaming at the TV and have more emotions in that moment than you do maybe at work or, at softball practice or whatever. But really choosing to be intentional with that rest is what I believe is the state of Sabbath versus just standardized rest.
Yeah. Yeah, I love your word intentional, if I'm honest, because that means you have to, I don't know, and maybe intentional might look different for you guys, but to me it tells me that there is some type of plan, right? There is an action step towards it. It's not just like, oh, I landed in this and here we are, right? So applying that in daily life. Let me take a step back, right? And before we get into maybe some intentional ways that we all have found, or that we're working towards in some ways. But I think culturally, rest is frowned upon, right? Like if I said to you, hey guys, last night I went to bed at 7:15, and I didn't get out of bed until 10, right? Like there's a part of you that you would be like, is he okay? You know what I mean? Like,
or this guy's a bum.
Or he's lazy, right? Like, and now, their laziness, right, exists, and there is a, sorry for the generation to come, feels like we might need to do another video on work ethic, but I feel like it has a stigma, right, around it. So how do we, biblically as Jesus people, and just, leading our families, our lives, like, how do we address a culture, right, that's like, go, fast, the American dream, get after, build, scale, grow, like, but still maybe find that moments of rest for our soul, so our soul doesn't decay in that pace, right?
Yeah, I think if you look at it both ways, and from a biblical standpoint, we have a kingdom assignment that we're called to fulfill, whether you own a car dealership or you are a teacher or you're a doctor or a lawyer.
Because there might be people that are watching, right, that aren't afforded the luxury of being in the ministry, and they're out in their daily lives working 9 to 5 going like, rest is great for you guys.
Yeah.
But
they got the grind or die mentality, right? Like, and I think a lot of times in ministry we get the grind or die mentality. So there's almost like we have this obligation to fulfill expectation, externally. But I think Sabbath forces us to say, just as we were reminded in the Word, that like we got to take care of this temple, because from the heart of man and from the mouth, like it all flows from the heart and from the soul of man. So there's an obligation externally that people look at you and say, well, you're this, so you must do ... But there has to come a point in time in the rhythms of our life where we become obligated to self.
Yeah.
And say, in order to be a great father, husband, pastor, leader, business owner, friend, I am obligated to take into priority the fact of my own personal health and rest, so that I'm my best possible version of me in the highest, prioritized moment of my life. Because out of that soul, if not taken care of, you're either going to flow life or death. You're going to hurt people. You're going to help people. You're going to lead people one way. You're going to lead them another, right? Astray or on point with purpose. And so I think it's sometimes we have to carry the weight of the obligations we feel externally where people are asking and begging of us. We've got to be able to say it's just as heavy as an obligation for us to really prioritize our internal obligation of health.
I would say, too, when you think of how the enemy tries to come against us and distract us the most, and I'm talking about us like anybody in life, that we all often look at, he comes at us with a addiction that we wrestle with or we struggle with, or temptation or something like that. But if you really back away and think about it for a minute, like, I wonder if his greatest temptation in our life isn't with something, but it's keeping us so busy that we can't get to a place of rest. And rest, when you think about the structure of how that is in the Bible, and from Genesis with creation, God rest, in Leviticus with the fields, every 7 years the field would rest. Jesus taking time to escape the crowds that he was ministering to in order to be with the Father to rest. That it's in those moments that really becomes a reset for not the getting to the other side of exhaustion, but the actual reset of our soul. And when that part of us becomes empty, it makes it virtually impossible for us to fight temptation that comes against us. And so he doesn't have to like bury us with temptation if he can get us so tired that we can't make decisions or process, decisions in a way that God would want us to.
That's so solid. It's almost like the enemy uses the more effectual tool of a subtle decay than he does like these big sudden destructions.
And he wraps it in a strength.
That's it.
Like he wraps it in this way that we actually have pride in. Like I didn't take a 12-hour. I didn't sleep for 12 hours last night. Like I didn't take a nap. Like and you think about that, it's kind of wrapped in something that we actually love about ourselves and we brag about, but it's the very thing that puts us in a state of unhealth that makes it harder for us to live the life that he's created us to live.
Yeah.
It's almost like whenever people ask you how was your week, how you respond to that is a great barometer of how your soul is, right? How was your week? Man, it's 7 days, man, and I'm exhausted. And it's like, what happened if we would escape the trap of the enemy of that subtle decay of our soul? And somebody's like, hey, how was your week? Like, man, it was so fulfilling. I got to really do some cool things, and God set up some divine appointments in the process.
Right.
Instead of looking back and being like, man, I survived, like the Eeyore effect, right? Like, man, nobody even sees the hard work I put in. But we get in this place where we're like, man, it was fulfilling. Yeah, I put in the work.
Yeah.
But I also sat at his feet.
So let's be honest for a second.
Yeah.
When was the last time that somebody asked you how your week was and you responded like that?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I love that.
I don't know the last time that
I didn't say
I've
fulfilled.
ever responded. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I when you said that, Mike, it like convicted me a little bit, because I mean, I've had a few people ask me this week, man, because new adventures, how's your week, and my response has been like, it's like drinking information from a fire hose, like
crazy.
It's like overload, That is fulfilling, and it is God's purpose in this season of my life for me, but I didn't respond to it in a way of fulfillment. I responded in a way that would get them to think that I'm actively doing something,
performing.
Right? And there's that tension there, man, so to answer your question, that I struggle with, even after a person who went on a sabbatical and has tried to implement Sabbath and rest in my daily life.
Yeah.
The word that and if you want to answer that, totally fine, but the word I keep hearing, which is what you started with, is like just making sure that we spend so much time being intentional. And it takes great discipline to be intentional.
Oh my gosh.
Intentional with even our words of how we're communicating what we've done this week, right?
Yeah.
And I got to work on that internally for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't propose that because I've nailed it.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of times I get to the end of the week and I'm resting for recovery and not rejuvenation.
Sure.
And there's times where I'll carry over into the next week where I'm serving from exhaustion and not from purpose. Mm-hmm. And then I find like this spiral that will begin in seasons. And through just a series of voices that speak into my life and things of that nature, they help me understand when I'm hitting that space where I begin to lose effectivity because I've not addressed the thing that matters most, which is soul rest.
Okay, who are those people that you have given that space to, like that you've invited into that intimate moment that you trust their voice to say, hey, Mike, I'd like to submit this to you.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to have somebody. It's like the 3 stages of people in your life. You've got somebody who's close, who can monitor you and see your blind spots because of regularity and familiarity. So Pastor Ryan has been that for me in many ways. He's the one who's got the permission to pull me in anytime and be like, hey, I'm noticing this trend, or I'm noticing this. We need to address this. But then there's also so much value in having someone that is like, my wife, my spouse is another one. If you're not married, don't be discouraged, because there's somebody that you would call a best friend. For me, it's my spouse, and she can, when the kids go to bed, she has access to look at me and say, hey, you were kind of sharp with Ben today, or you were kind of sharp with Marshall, or man, just afford him a little more grace, or he's only 8, man, he's going to be fine. But then I'm a firm believer, and here at TC, we're a firm believer in counseling. And I have a counselor in my life. His name is Lynn. He's outstanding. And he helped me realize that the root of a lot of my insecurities and some of the performance issues that I carry of like having to feel the need to perform my way to the table comes out of a place that I am serving on empty.
Sure.
Constantly. And so he's put me into a Sabbath rhythm. And it's funny because I see him like quarterly at most, twice a year, minimally. And when I walk in, he can almost, the Holy Spirit allows him to see where I'm at.
Yeah.
Isn't that the worst feeling?
It's terrible because you want to like, I've never ever, that's right.
You know you're walking out and you're about to get just hung out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I've never ever in my life had the temptation to want to wear makeup, but there's sometimes I go to see him, I'm like, I need a powder room because he's going to read my mail, right? He's going to see me and be like, Mike, you look a mess.
Yo, speaking of which, we should probably do a whole nother video on just the power and of the voice of like therapy. You know what I mean? Because there's so much like around that conversation, you know, as well. But yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying there, man.
But having people you trust, whose words carry uncanny weight,
Yeah.
who you trust enough to be vulnerable. And I think the cool thing about that is when you get around people who are in the space to be vulnerable with you, it makes you more vulnerable with who your authentic self is and where you're authentic, really where you are.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, as we lean into a vulnerable moment, right? I mean, in just a few minutes, you're going to talk a little bit about the Sabbath for you in this season, but that, I think, you know, just to reiterate the heart behind this video, right, is like, where it's not three professionals sitting up here giving you the 1, 2, 3s on how to rest. Like, I think this is, that we're trying to invite you into an authentic, vulnerable conversation around like this is something that we're working through as well with our families and our rhythms of life, which I love that language, you know, of being okay to be vulnerable. Now I'm gonna hit that for a minute because there's a lot of talks, a lot of podcasts, a lot of sermons, a lot of blogs, you know, whatever about vulnerability. You know what I mean? Just like, you know, I want to be vulnerable, and like I want to be I'm gonna be vulnerable with you with the information that I want to give you. You know what I mean? Because on the other side of it, there's like an extreme level of like, oh, maybe you don't need to know all of that, right? So understand it. So when we talk about vulnerability for a minute, right? Like, how do you think you can get to a place of vulnerability without occupying Sabbath? Because I think true, authentic vulnerability comes from a place of a healthy soul. Because when your soul is healthy, back to what you said a minute ago, when your soul is healthy, then you don't feel like you have to build up these walls around people so that they can't come in, right? Because my soul is healthy, so I can bring you close and you can see me for who I am, and I'm okay if you accept that version of me or not, right? So how much does being vulnerable play into rest and Sabbath, if at all? You don't have to agree with me on
I think
this.
there's a dance between the two. I think we're only as self-aware as we are Sabbathed and rested. I think a lot of times, in the higher the pace, the bigger the mask we wear. And we don't take time to actually slow down. I don't know about you guys, but to be vulnerable for a moment, there's been seasons in my life where I've prayed for strength. Like, Lord, I need strength to make it through this season. And a couple of months back, I prayed for that. I said, Lord, I need strength to make it through this season. And the Lord responded, and he spoke to my spirit. He goes, you don't need strength. You need rest.
Good. So in rest, you can gain
Find strength.
Cool.
Isn't it unique how God gives us opportunities when we pray for something, then he gives us opportunities to find that?
And everything we need is at the feet of Jesus, yet it's the last place we go because we're too busy to be there.
You said something to me. I'm gonna
Mike?
drop that one real quick.
Mike just dropped the mic.
Yeah, you said something to me the other day, and it stuck to me. And so I know sometimes throwing you on the spot is not what you prefer or love, but you said this is going to be a season, and maybe you can share with the church a little bit. You've communicated it already, but maybe for those who were unable to attend or something. But you said this is going to be a season for me to just sit at the feet of Jesus, right? And not be the doer in the kitchen, but the son at the feet. When you said that, man, like it spoke to my soul, and it was, I think, just in passing, like in your living room or something.
Yeah.
That had to come from a place of something that you've like been stirring on a little bit.
Yeah, and I'd say that just in case somebody just kind of dropped into this podcast and hasn't seen any of the other videos on the page, we announced recently that Andrew and I are going on a sabbatical, and we're going to be gone for 8 weeks, and so I would encourage you, if you haven't seen it yet, make sure and watch that video of that announcement from Sunday. But yeah, I think that I keep coming back. So 25 years of following Jesus, and my personality is such a driver personality and doer personality. And I think every time that I get to a low place, emotionally or spiritually or whatever, in my journey with the Lord, it always comes back to one thing, and that is I've been doing ministry, not sitting at his feet. And in Luke 10, you've got that interaction where, Jesus comes to Martha's house, and Mary's there, and Martha's in the kitchen making the meal and the preparations, and Mary's sitting at Jesus's feet. And then Martha comes in, and she's like ticked off because Mary's just chilling, like what you guys were getting at earlier, like the 12 hours of sleep. She's just chilling at Jesus's feet, and Martha's doing all the work. And so she's kind of having her moment, and Jesus looks at her and is kind of posing the question to Martha, like, why are you so worried and concerned about all of this, that there's really only one thing that you should be concerned about, and Mary has found it.
She's figured it out
at the feet of Jesus. And I just think that, for me personally, that is always the gravitational pull. And I think everybody kind of has one pull, that either you're at Jesus' feet so much that you're not really doing anything. Or you have a tendency to do a lot, and you're doing it for Jesus, and you're doing it out of a heart of thankfulness for what he's done in your life, but you miss that connection and the interaction, the relational side of being with Jesus. And so that's one of the things for me that I think that I'm the most excited about, in the season. We've said that sabbatical is different than vacation. Vacation is kind of going and just kind of getting away from work and getting away from the hustle and bustle of life. And it could involve some additional sleep, but sabbatical is way more intentional than that. It's not as much about exhaustion and being tired as much as it is about like reconnecting with Jesus. And so it's been something for me that I'm excited about, because it is an intentional period of time where I'm able to totally disconnect from all the pressures and the demands and responsibilities of what I do, and just get back to the feet of Jesus. And I'm not going to the feet of Jesus to ask him to give me something, or to give me an answer for the church or the direction, or I'm just sitting at Jesus' feet and just listening. And it takes slowing down and just being patient with open ears. And I'm looking forward to a season like that.
There's so many things that come to mind, man. I mean, we could go on forever, and maybe we got to do a episode 1, 2, 3, and 4 for this, because just in that right there, I'm sure there's tons of questions that people may have around that, right? Like, from a from an employee perspective, of someone who's just in the grind of the day, to a business owner who's probably going like, well, that must be nice, right? From other people in ministry, that their churches don't adopt those rhythms. Mm-hmm. When you were sharing just a minute ago, there's a great responsibility that comes with shepherding, stewarding a flock, right? I mean, Timothy talks a lot about the authority and the obligation and the responsibility of it, and being a pastor, I can remember it was in 2022. I had been in ministry for 15 years. And everything that you just said a minute ago, I had stopped. Like I got married, I graduated college, got married, moved somewhere else, came back, just constantly going. Ended up here to the great Pacific Northwest, served there 12 years, planted churches, do. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is my spiritual gift, right? Like it is what God has created and designed for me. But in the spiritual giftedness, I forgot the gift of the person of Jesus, really, mm-hmm. And I can remember, I shared this with you a couple days ago, I can remember being, it was my last Sunday before my Sabbath, before I was able to go on Sabbath, and I had one of my staff members came up to me, and he was so excited for me to be able to go on Sabbath. I mean, he was pumped. And he had his journal out. He was always one of those guys that in staff meeting, he was taking notes, and every sermon, he'd sit all three and he'd take, like, man, this guy's just receiving all. And he came up to me. He was like, Pastor B, man, before you go, give me something. And I was so empty. I had nothing else. I looked at him and I was like, give me 12 weeks. And he looked at me. He was like, all right, he wrote it down. Give me 12. He literally wrote down, give me 12 weeks. And sure enough, when I came back 12 weeks, he was ready. But I thought to myself in that moment, how did I get here? Mm-hmm. Like, how did I get to this place of like, mm-hmm. I got so caught up in just doing that I forgot just a piece. So from that, I went on. And Mike, you said something in our conversation of just a few days ago about implementing Sabbath in like your rhythms of life, you've figured out a very practical and intentional way. And I think honestly, bro, like for people that can't take 8 weeks, I think you have some beautiful insight on how to help people understand this idea of Sabbath in a pretty unique model.
Yeah, and I think to clarify, I figured it out on paper, and I've got a great manual.
Sure. Yeah,
but
right?
And exercise and practicum,
it's
I'm
good
not
to know
sure.
my phone.
Yeah. But this actually is an overflow from my counselor, Lynn. He told me, he's like, Mike, there's got to be a rhythm of Sabbath. Sabbath very often can be viewed as an event instead of a series of decisions, So my wife and I, when I came back from the meeting with my counselor where he walked me through what a rhythm of Sabbath looks like, we have tried to implement this, and there's days we've hit it out of the park. There's days where I have struck out. But Sabbathing daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, or whatever of those 5 your time and your rhythm of life really allows.
All right.
What does a daily Sabbath look like? There's got to be a cutoff from the world moment. Maybe it's for you if you're a nurse at a doctor's office, taking your lunch, leaving your phone in your desk drawer, sitting at a picnic table, eating in God's creation to soak in what he might have to say to you in your midday. Maybe it's at night. You get the kids to bed. You get everything kind of settled. The dishes done, right? All the fun things. Having the ability to just slow down, flip your phone over on Do Not Disturb, and just be in the presence of the ones you love, or be in the presence with the one you love.
Which takes discipline.
So much.
And boundaries, right?
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, some people's urgency can't become your emergency at all hours of the day.
Mike, you just dropping
You know,
bars
like,
today.
you can't let somebody.
He'd be a good like rapper because he rhymes everything.
I can't talk that fast though. But there's inevitably there's going to be someone in your circle of communication that's going to try to rob you of that daily moment.
Sure.
Where their thing is 911 to them, but really it's like, this totally could have waited.
Yeah.
So there's that daily Sabbath, weekly, finding that day. And the cool thing about Sabbath in this daily rhythm that you have to separate your mind from is that it's some sort of monkhood that you go sit in a temple in silence for 28 days. Like there's a rhythmic part of this, and I believe the most practical way to define a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly Sabbath is dismissing what you feel like you should do in order to do the things that you would like to do. So prioritizing woulds over shoulds, right? I should go out there and mow the grass. That's not Sabbath. I would like to play a round of golf. Now that's Sabbath, right? Man, I should go in there and finish painting the nursery because our baby's on the way. Man, I would really like to go sit in the front yard with my son and play baseball. So you can be actively Sabbathing.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be like this strange music on, sitting in a dark room for hours at a time.
Right.
But then you move into like a weekly Sabbath, finding that one day of the week where you're like, hey, we're going to protect Saturday. We're going to protect Friday. We're going to protect Sunday. I think Sunday's a really cool day to reset because you get first what matters most, which is Jesus at church. And then the rest of the day you're like, hey, what can we get into that doesn't let us get into high blood pressure? What can we do that's just going to keep us in a really connected form as a family? Or what am I going to do if I'm a single person? That's going to be a continuance leading into a momentum building day of Monday.
Which for me would not include golf.
No, that blood pressure goes up. It's the first shank, it goes from wood to should, right? You're like, I should really be better at golf. And then monthly, one of the things that my wife and I try to do monthly is we try to really practice a day without the kids. If you've got kids, minimally monthly, try to find that pocket where the kids get dropped off, you go to dinner. Maybe if you have the liberty and the ability, stay overnight somewhere.
Sure.
Just a way, just to be able to reconnect and really rejuvenate one to another. Quarterly, a long weekend, right? So the cool thing about living, if you're in the Panhandle, like where we're at in West Florida, man, you're 4 hours from the mountains and an hour and a half from the beach, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be some crazy expensive thing, right?
Hey, where are mountains?
You can go up to the central Georgia and see
Really?
beautiful scapes, man. Like
cool.
it's gorgeous, right? So finding a way to just kind of change your scene once a quarter is so important. Because sometimes the greatest enemy we have is familiarity.
Yeah.
Like you have all intentions to Sabbath, but then you're walking through the house and you see that one project that needs attention. Or you have all intentions of Sabbath and you're walking through the mall with your family and you see that person that you're like, oh, that's my client. I got to talk to him, you know? And then once a year, we try, my wife and I and our family and a lot of the team here at TC, we try to take an extended vacation once a year that overlaps at least one Sunday. To where Chris Hodges actually came up with the idea of the pastor of Church of the Highlands, one of the largest churches in America. He takes a week to recover and then a week to enjoy. And in that week to recover, he rejuvenates his soul. He Sabbaths and prepares for a vacation where him and his family go off and have a blast.
Sure.
And does nothing but woods, right? I would love to go to this theme park. I would love to go experience this or take my family to Yosemite or whatever. But man, just finding that rhythm, prioritizing it. And here's the deal. If you're an iCalendar person or if you're however you kind of organize your day, whether you have calendar or you guys have a whiteboard on the fridge, whatever, just begin to intentionally put it out there.
There's the word again, man.
Like we've got to prioritize this day. This day is off limits. And this time frame of this day is off limits. This time frame of today is off limits. And beginning to actually break the rhythms that make you, obligated to external needs.
Yeah.
And really obligate yourself to internal rejuvenation.
Yeah.
I would say with that, and then I would say I want to talk in the next podcast just a little bit about what that looks like for me.
Yeah.
In that season, just in case anybody's interested. But I guess my challenge I would throw out to, to those that are watching is start somewhere.
Yeah.
So this is such an amazing,
So good.
structure. What can easily happen is we can hear a structure like that and say, well, I can't do that, and then throw it all out. And, my encouragement would be to start somewhere, and then don't carry the guilt of when you miss it. Just look for the next on-ramp to get back on, because the reality is that all of us have spent our entire ministry, lives. So 25 years, I don't know where you guys are at.
13 years, yeah.
13 and
15,
and
16.
15, 16 years, and none of us have mastered that.
Right.
And so we just keep coming back to it and recognizing that we need to practice it. We're just not perfect in it.
Yeah.
And so it's a great structure to aspire to build some framework around, and just find something that you can do to get started.
Yeah.
I mean, a huge one for Andrew and I is the quarterly part. We're always getting away for a couple days, and now our kids are a little older, so it's easier. But when our kids were younger, we looked for a different approach. So some approaches might work better for certain people in certain seasons of life. But just start somewhere.
Yeah.
And then when you mess it up, when you get busy and something gets in the way, just find the next opportunity for an on-ramp.
Yeah.
And just begin to work it into to your rhythms.
What I love about what we're doing, and so we can honor people's time, we can land this one and then maybe do another one if people want to keep following along, journey along here. But it's just that you are inviting us into this process to journey with the Lord and with you as our pastor, right? Which I think is really cool and unique, because when it's like, Greg, you're going away, and getting this rest, and then you're going to come back and and everybody else is going to be like,
Yep.
But if everyone hears what we're communicating in this video, like, we all are invited in this opportunity to walk alongside of you in, a little bit of a distance, right?
Yeah.
But to Sabbath for our soul as well, so that as we head into the next season of life that God has for us, our souls are in a place that we can live this out beautifully, So I thank you for your leadership, man, and just challenging us to find rest in our lives as you're finding rest in your lives. And man, I believe that if we all do this for ourselves, really is beautiful to see what God can do when we release.
Yep.
Right.
That's what Sabbath is all about.
Yeah.
Trust.
Yeah. Trust.
God's got it. We
Yeah.
can trust him.
Yeah. Well, thank you for tuning in, whether you've been watching at work or maybe in the car or however you're listening, watching. We're just super grateful that you journey along with us. And as mentioned a few times in this video, I guess we're gonna bring out video number 2. So stay tuned. Love you. I hope you have a great rest of your week.